So if someone gives a wrong answer, you got the stick there?
Yeah. No, I got Ori.
Okay, great. Let's take a few moments to set the motivation. Okay, we'll just meditate together. As we meditate, I'll say a few words just for setting the motivation. So now to set our mind, set our motivation, let's think that may we as a group here, having come together, may our meeting tonight become the cause for us to learn what it means to become a bodhisattva. To have the affection and compassion of a bodhisattva. So that eventually we also actualize the fullest potential of our own mind. So that will be of greatest benefit to ourselves and all other living beings. No, okay. So first of all, I want to make sure you can all hear me. Also in the back, am I talking loud enough? Good. And if for some reason, if you don't understand what I say, if the English is not clear enough, if there are words that you don't know, please say so, and then we can immediately have someone translate them. Because I'm trying to use less of the technical terms, because there are a lot of technical terms in Buddhism, but I try to refrain from them, but still, out of habit, if I use one of those words, so please let me know. Okay, so now I know you had your exams. I can ask you questions. I've been told. Okay, so basically what Alain asked me to talk about tonight is who's a bodhisattva. What is a who is a bodhisattva? What does it mean to be a bodhisattva? Okay. So actually, in a few words, I can say one thing about a bodhisattva is someone whose main interest, whose main concern, whose main goal in life is to benefit others. So a bodhisattva is someone who's totally driven by his or her affection for other sentient beings. Okay, so that's basically the main driving force for a bodhisattva. Now, that is described as, well, bodhicitta. What is the compassion. What is the definition of compassion? What does it mean?
Being with.
Pardon?
Being with.
Being with.
מה ההגדרה של חמלה כמו שלמדנו?
Sheer will for someone else not to suffer.
Very good. So it's like a Yes.
He didn't give me fadichot.
That word, I have to learn that word. That's a sweet
You
word.
must learn it.
What is it again?
Fadichot.
Okay, so it is an affectionate attitude, being with others, like connecting with others, that wishes for others to be free from suffering. Okay, so right now, of course, we also want someone to be free from suffering, which is the center of the universe. Me. Right? So we wish this for ourselves, but of course not for all sentient beings. So a bodhisattva is someone whose main benefit is others. So we can already tell the difference between ourselves and such a person. But there's so much more to a bodhisattva. Actually, in Buddhism, we talk about many different goals. Buddhism is a system which sets forth philosophy, science. So the Dalai Lama usually talks of Buddhism as having three aspects: philosophy, science, and religion. Those three aspects. And those three, they are engaged in, they are practiced, if you like, with a goal in mind. So very different to maybe Western philosophy, where there's not necessarily a goal, but there are many goals actually. I would think there are 4 goals, although only 3 of them are usually mentioned. 4 goals. 1 is happiness in this lifetime. 2nd is happiness in future lifetimes, if they exist, right? Which from a Buddhist point of view, you know the answer, what Buddhists would say, what the scriptures would say. The 3rd is what's called liberation or nirvana. And the 4th is awakening. I like that word better than enlightenment. Enlightenment sounds like you've got a light bulb going on. Mm-hmm. Awakening, I like awakening. I like that word. So there are 4 goals. Okay? So the 1st and the 2nd are basically not very reliable, because happiness can easily be changed into suffering. So reliable in the sense that they are reversible. Whereas from a Buddhist point of view, reaching nirvana and reaching enlightenment, they're irreversible. Once you reach them, you cannot lose it. Now, what is the difference between the two? What is the difference? So I have to explain that a little bit before I can actually come to explain what a bodhisattva is. The difference between the two is that there are different types of obstructions. What's the word for obstruction in Hebrew?
מעצורים, מכשולים.
מעצורים, מכשולים. So, you have these things that obstruct the mind. This is based on the idea or on the view or on the philosophy that our mind is actually pure. That our mind, at its nature, is that of love, compassion, and wisdom. That's the actual nature of our mind. So what we think is natural, we may think it's natural to be angry and it's natural to have craving, well, only because it feels natural to us, but it actually isn't. The real nature of our mind is in the nature of love, compassion, and so forth. And so whatever is in the way to experiencing this real nature, that is called obstruction. So really, Buddhist practice is not about gaining something. It is actually about removing that which is extra. So we do say, develop love, cultivate compassion. It sounds like you're taking something from the outside, but actually you're just removing what's not supposed to be there. It's like it's an obstruction, it's something that is not in the nature of the mind. We say, for instance, being wet is in the nature of water, in the nature of liquid. Being moist is in the nature of water. But being hot is not in the nature of water. Water can be hot, or being muddy is not in the nature of water. You can remove the mud. So our mind is like that. It is not in our nature to be angry, to be selfish, and so forth. It's not in the nature of the mind. So that is the basic view that enables a person to reach either nirvana or awakening. So you just need to remove what's extra. All right, so what do you think is extra?
Bad feelings.
Bad feelings, okay. All right.
Anger.
Anger, very good. What else?
Jealousy.
Jealousy, yes. What else?
Pride.
Pardon?
Pride.
Pride. Okay, right away we go to the afflictions. The first one was sad feeling, which is a result of the afflictions. So the afflictive emotions, what do you call them? Afflictive
רגשות
emotions?
עכורים.
Right? Would that be harmful emotions? They're different
רגשות שליליים,
translations.
רגשות עכורים.
Yeah. So afflictive emotions, harmful emotions, they're the obstructions. What is the root of those? What is the root cause of those afflictions?
Our own view of reality.
מה המקור לכל הרגשות השליליים?
Ignorance. Ignorance, or did you tell them the answer? You told the
That
answer
is in the
perfect.
test.
Is it very good?
No, I'm kidding. I'm sure he is. So, ignorance, or I like sometimes to use the word misperception. Yeah, so a misunderstanding of reality. Okay, so that is basically the main problem, our misperception of reality. And that leads to all sorts of other things. It leads to other misperceptions. So what is the root misperception? What is the basic misperception, basic ignorance? What does the mind wrongly perceive? Self, okay.
Ego.
Pardon?
Ego.
Ego, okay. Ego or self. To be a little bit more specific, what does it perceive, how does it perceive the self to exist? Independently, separately, very good. So, different words you can use. Independently, objectively, independent is probably the best word. Inherently, truly, etc. Okay. Now, all these misperceptions, it makes total sense. These it's like perceiving something extra that's actually not there. And so you exaggerate how things exist, which leads to exaggerated emotions. Anger is an exaggeration, it's an exaggerated emotion. Craving is an exaggerated emotion, and so forth. So now, we have these afflictions. But when we talk about that which keeps us from being liberated. So I said there are two goals. There's liberation and there's awakening. So what is it that keeps us from liberation, from reaching nirvana? It is that root misperception, and it is the afflictions that arise from that, the afflictive emotions. So first, there is grasping at inherent existence of an I or other phenomena, and that gives rise to self-cherishing. I am the center of the universe, being attached to my own happiness as being more important than the happiness of others. And then that leads to anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and so forth. Now that is described as afflictive obstructions. The technical word is afflictive emotions, these are afflictive emotions. They're part of a category, a wider category, that is called afflictive obstructions. Because afflictive obstructions, another word for afflictive obstructions, is that which prevents us from reaching nirvana. So I said earlier on, reaching nirvana is not about gaining something new, it's removing that which is extra, removing that which is not supposed to be there. It's not in the nature of our mind. So what it is we need to remove in order to attain nirvana is called afflictive obstructions. Another word is another word or another term is obstructions to attaining nirvana. That makes it pretty clear. But it includes more than the root ignorance, the root misperception, and all the other afflictive emotions that arise from it. Something more is part of this afflictive obstructions. What could that be? One more thing. It's not enough to say it's the afflictions. There's one more thing. I'm not expecting you to know this. I'm not sure. You would know, but I'll ask anyway. There's something more.
Can you ask again?
Pardon?
Ask again.
I'll ask again, okay? So when we say the obstructions that hinder us, that prevent us from reaching nirvana, that's the category. So this category includes ignorance, the root misperception, and then other afflictions such as anger, attachment, and so forth that arise from that. But also includes something more. What could that be? Pardon?
Passion.
Passion? No.
Let the past affect the future. Let the past affect the present.
No, it's actually no. I'll tell you what it is. It's the seeds. They call the seed of the afflictions. It's the potential of the afflictions to arise. So actually, anger means the mind itself, the mind that is angry, the mind that is resentful, the mind that exaggerates the negativity of another person or another of that which we're angry with. But they also describe, in the scriptures, they talk about the seed of anger. For instance, right now, I'm not angry. But do I have the potential to get angry? Yes. So that potential is also a problem. It's not just the anger. I can train myself not to get angry for a month. But I still have the trigger. There's still, or the trigger means if I have a trigger of anger, anger can still arise. So therefore, that is described as a seed or a potential for anger to arise. So therefore, we talk of the misperception of reality, misperception as the root that gives rise to all sorts of other afflictive emotions. With the misperception of reality, it's also described as an afflictive emotion. Maybe in the West, we wouldn't really describe it as an emotion, but then in Tibetan, there is no word for emotion. So it's not surprising that a word is used here. So afflictive emotion or affliction, whatever you want to use. So the misperception of reality is an afflictive emotion, and so are all the other misperceptions that arise from the root misperception, and so are anger, etc. So all those minds, they are what are described as afflictive obstructions or obstructions that prevent nirvana. All right. And on top of that, you also include the potential of those afflictions to arise. Right? So very important, because we may, from our own experience, we know for a long time we don't get angry, right? We don't have anger, but it's still there, right? The craving, we may not have craving, it may get less, may get weaker, and with respect to a certain object, we don't crave any longer, but it's still, the potential is still there. Why is the potential still there? Because our misperception of reality is there. As long as we have the misperception of reality, can't get rid of it. Okay, so that is what is called afflictive obstructions. That's this category. And in order to become liberated, this is what needs to be removed. Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward. But, so therefore, an arhat would be someone who's eliminated that. That's what an arhat, that's what a person called an arhat. What does the word arhat mean in English? You know?
Yeah. Foe destroyer.
Foe destroyer. Enemy destroyer.
Foe enemy.
Foe is just another word. It's an old-fashioned word for enemy.
This is me.
But it's short. Old-fashioned word, tradition. So, right, Buddhism in jeans. That's so traditional. No, but it's like, yeah, it's this old-fashioned word, like foe, destroyer. Yeah. And it basically means, what is the foe?
מיהו האויב שלנו שאנחנו רוצים להשמיד אותו?
Yeah, the afflictive, right? The afflictions or the afflictive obscurations. So a foe destroyer is an arhat, or foe destroyer is someone who removes these afflictive obstructions and now reaches the absence of those obstructions, and that's called nirvana. So it's like in English we don't usually use words to describe absences. Except we do. Can you think of an everyday word which is a positive term? It does not imply a negation, but still it doesn't, the word itself doesn't imply, it doesn't have non-something, something, right? But there are words, like usually the syllable a, or the syllable non is like a negative, right? But do we have words in English that connote just the absence of something?
Want.
Pardon?
Want.
What?
Yes.
What absence does it connote?
בוודאי חוסר.
מילה שיש בה חוסר שהיא חיובית, נכון?
There is a want in something. Want means nothing.
Well, I'm trying to think of when we say nirvana, okay? When we use the word nirvana, people think it's a place sometimes. Sometimes people think it's a place. Sometimes people think, I don't know.
It's a state of mind.
State of mind, but actually, strictly speaking, nirvana is just an absence. It's a lack of something. Yeah, it's an absence. So in everyday, so sometimes people think an absence cannot exist.
Excuse me, want is absence.
Absence of
Want
what?
is חוסר. W-A-N-T is a חוסר.
It's an
Not the
absence.
verb to want, but the noun want.
Want.
Yes.
And now want. What does it
want,
mean?
absence. There is a shortage of flour. There is a want of flour.
Oh, a
It's
need, like a need.
Not a
Not a
need,
need, a want.
A shortage. It's an old-fashioned word.
Ah, well, I'm not familiar. I'm just not familiar with the word, so I apologize for
There
that.
is a verse in Psalms that say, God is my shepherd, I shall not be in want.
Right.
Ah.
Right.
Shall not be in
wow.
want.
נכון,
Very,
Well, that's really like photo destroyed. It goes even more. Wow, I mean, very good. Yeah. So there you go. Like in the Bible, you find examples of that.
Yes.
I was actually thinking of remission. You know, like in thinking of
yes,
cancer.
but the remission is a new word.
Right. It's a new word.
Comparing to want.
Yes, absolutely. So definitely the word want or the word remission. So nirvana actually does not imply some negative, right? But actually just means the absence of the obstructions that were there before and now are no longer there. So it means that our mind goes on, consciousness, our awareness, our mind, that goes on, but now it's free from the misperception. And because it's free from the misperception, and not just free from the misperception, but also from the seeds, the potential for that misperception to arise again, that is gone now. And so therefore, if the root cause is not there, you can't have the rest, right? If you don't have a seed of something, you can't have a sprout. This means, therefore, to attain nirvana, nirvana is just the absence, the cessation of something that was there before, but is no longer there. And the mind goes on, and the person who's reached that, the technical term is a foe destroyer. Because they destroyed afflictive obstructions, which include the afflictive emotions, plus the potential, the seeds for them to arise. That's it. Okay. But there is a problem. There is a problem that actually, although when our mind is free from this, already we experience so much happiness. We are able to experience incredible love, incredible. We have a lot of incredible wisdom with regard to understanding how phenomena really exist, with regard to the fact that things change all the time. Excuse me. With regard to the fact that nothing exists inherently. So all that understanding is there, but our mind is still obstructed. Our mind is still obstructed. It seems hard to believe. We removed everything, but actually there's still something left. So what could that be? What could that be? Still something left. Well, maybe to give an example, maybe it works with in terms of an example. I'm not sure. Well, I use the analogy we discussed before. Actually, they don't say glass; they say wooden, because it's just a glass holds something.
Yeah.
So sorry, wood is a better example. So let's say you have wood, and you put garlic in that wooden container. You put a lot of garlic in there, okay, and you keep it in there for many years. Very, very potent garlic. So when you remove the garlic, what are you left with? Smell. There's a smell. There's still a smell left, right? I once asked this to a student. I once taught a group of people from Emory University. So I asked, what happens when you remove the garlic? And they were like, more garlic? So no one came up with the smell. Anyway, so you remove all the garlic, but there's still a smell left. So that's exactly here, the same idea. When we remove the afflictions, there's still something left in the mind. So this is like what we describe in English as tendencies. So actually it's a little difficult to describe it because the mind is so hard to understand anyway. So we use analogies, usually physical objects, to try to understand something that is anything but physical. Okay, so a vessel, this is the example, the analogy. So basically our mind has anger, has afflictions, has misperception and all that, but we can remove it, we can remove this misperception, we can remove the seeds of this misperception, and we can remove all the afflictive emotions, but we're still left with impressions or imprints. So imprints here is also like a difficult word. What does it mean, an imprint? An imprint, of course, you all know the word imprint is like when you have sand and you put your hand in the sand, right? You have an imprint, there's something left. So again, an analogy, the word imprint is actually an analogy, the word for an analogy that has now become the technical term. So you have an imprint of the misperception of reality. You don't just have an imprint of the misperception of reality, you have an imprint for anger. You have an imprint of craving and attachment. So what could that be? What could that be? What could be an imprint? Let's start with anger, it's easier. So you have no longer any anger, but there's still something left in the mind, an imprint. What could be that imprint?
Previous life cycles, yeah.
Pardon?
Previous life cycles?
No, you got rid of that. You no longer, I mean, previous life's anger is gone anyway. It's naturally gone. But if you remove the anger, so it means previous life anger manifested already. So it's already, but that's gone now. But if I now remove my anger, anger can no longer arise in my mind. If I now become a foe destroyer, if I remove my misperception and all the other afflictions, they can no longer arise in my mind. Because the seeds are gone too. So I remove all of those together so they can no longer arise. But the anger has left like a tendency in my mind. What could that be?
Pridefulness?
Pardon?
Pridefulness?
No, because pride or arrogance, like here using pride, I prefer to use the word arrogance because pride can also mean a good thing. It doesn't have to be an affliction, being proud of your children.
Condescending.
Pardon?
Condescending.
Condescending. A condescending attitude. I would say that's still an affliction. To condescend, to be condescending, like, that would still be an affliction. So, I'm pretty sure, unless you read Lama Tsongkhapa's book, Illumination of the Thought, it's I can ask you to guess, but in the end it's very difficult. But once you understand that, it makes more sense with regard to attachment. So they say, speaking harshly. Speaking harshly without having the motivation to do so. Out of motivation, even of love and compassion, you may speak harshly. To be like rude, right? Without having the motivation. That could be because of the imprint of anger. Okay? Then there's also an imprint of craving or attachment. What could that be? Desire, like attached desire. What could be an imprint of that? Lama Tsongkhapa says, jumping around like a monkey. Not being able to sit still. In other words, not at all times. When you meditate, of course, you're very focused, you're very there's single point of concentration for many hours, but something exciting happens. So without getting attached, without generating afflicted desire, you kind of become jumpy. So that's a tendency. That is just a tendency from the desire. Okay? So therefore, this is something that still obstructs the mind. There's something, we had a discussion with one great meditator. He's a great scholar in Dharamsala, where I live, and he's also a great meditator. He's someone who's been, for years, he's been in meditation. In fact, he's very close to the Dalai Lama. So when the Dalai Lama comes together with scientists or with Thupten Chodron, the nun Thupten Chodron from the US. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Thupten Chodron, she's writing a book right now with this holiness, with the Dalai Lama, together with the Dalai Lama. He's present. So he's a great, great scholar. And we had this discussion with him, like when you don't like someone, in the sense that you don't feel comfortable in their presence. You just don't feel comfortable in their presence. So it's like you have great love for them. You want them to be happy. You don't want them to suffer. You don't have resentment, no anger, nothing. But you don't click with that person. You don't really connect with that person. So is that an afflictive emotion? No, it's something natural. You just can't help it. With other people you get along really well, but others you don't. So we had this whole discussion. Is that an affliction? And actually the conclusion we came to, because it's not clear in the text, it's not that you have hatred or resentment or any of those. It's just a deep emotional state. So that seems to also be due to an imprint of the afflictions. Also an imprint. Why? Because even when we're a foe destroyer, we still prefer some people and not others. There's a very subtle preference for people left. And how do we know that? Because the Buddha himself, in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, this is a very important body of sutras, the Buddha himself said, actual equanimity without any levels of faults, like any faulty kind of preference, is only found in a Buddha. Only an awakened Buddha, who's not just an arhat, a foe destroyer, but more than that, because he or she has removed those imprints, and I'll come to that. So therefore, this total equanimity with no preference whatsoever, only a Buddha experiences. We can experience levels of equanimity that are very important, but the best level, only a Buddha. So it seems that because of our afflictions, we can still have a preference for some, right? Like to hang out with this person more than with that person. And we try to overcome it, and we may work on it, but the spontaneous equanimity, seeing everyone as equally desirable, only a Buddha has. So you see that therefore these afflictive emotions, they leave something there, just some kind of leftover. So, in particular, the misperception of reality. I've only mentioned anger, I've mentioned attachment or desire, that they leave something there. I guess also our preference for some and just like not feeling totally comfortable with others is a mixture. It comes from anger towards some and attachment towards others. But most importantly, we talk about ignorance, our root misperception, the misperception that wrongly perceives the self and other phenomena as existing inherently. It also leaves a very important imprint, a very important residue in our mind. That although you remove the misperception, there's something left. What could that be? What could that be? Big, big problem.
Aversion?
No. Aversion is gone. Aversion is gone. So none of those afflictive emotions can any longer arise. So when you're foe destroyer, you removed that misperception, and it can no longer arise. You can no longer actively think phenomena don't exist inherently.
Physical something?
No.
Grasping the eye?
No more grasping. Grasping gone. No more grasping. It still appears. The appearance.
Other people's?
Other people anyway. Even in Buddha, I cannot remove others. No, only with regard to me.
Okay.
So if you are now foe destroyer, you have no longer any grasping, you no longer hold on to phenomena existing inherently, but they still appear. So the example they give is that of a mirror image.
A shadow.
A shadow, or like, let's take a mirror image. The mirror image, when you look in the mirror, it appears to be you. Do you believe it's you? Do you grasp it's you? Not at all. So you don't grasp. You no longer grasp. You don't believe. You don't believe in that appearance. It's like experiencing an optical illusion but not being fooled by it. So a photo story and arhat, things still appear to them to exist objectively. They still appear to exist inherently. But they know it's not true. They know it's like an optical illusion. They're no longer fooled by it. Whereas we are fooled by it. We believe every time the self appears to us, oh, there's me. And so anger arises out of me. I see myself as being hurt, right? There's a sense, someone has hurt me. And more precious than others, there's this instinctive sense. It's very subtle, not easy to recognize. But there's an instinctive sense, there's this I here and I need to protect it. I need to bring a happiness. And happiness comes through praise and not through being criticized. Happiness comes through gain and not through loss. So there's this instinctive sense. But you can get rid of that. You can totally get rid of that. No longer do you actively hold onto a self. And therefore you can no longer have anger or afflictions. But it still appears that way. Like the mirror image. It still appears to be your face. It still continues to appear. But you know it's not your face. Right? You're not going to, if there's a scratch, you're not going to scratch the mirror image, right? Because you know. So there are lots of examples of optical illusions. So those are easy for us to understand. So we have the appearance of these optical illusions, but we no longer grasp onto them. But the emptiness is very difficult to understand. So you have to become an arhat to no longer be fooled by them, by inherent existence, that you no longer grasp at it, but it still appears. So your mind is still obstructed. Does that make sense? Does that idea still make sense? So therefore there's still an obstruction there. I mean, it's amazing to become an arhat, but you still have those obstructions there. Now actually, who cares they're there? Come on, I mean, it's great. I removed my misperception. I can now generate incredible love and compassion for others. Okay, I don't perceive how things really exist, but who cares? Well, the bodhisattva cares. Because actually, when you're fully awakened, you remove those obstructions. There's no longer any obstruction in the mind. So sometimes they give the analogy of the mind. Our mind right now is this crystal. Anything can be reflected in it. It's like this transparent crystal. That's its real nature. But on top of it, you have all this mud, right? You have like mud around it. So that's our afflictive obstructions. Now if you remove those, become an arhat, you remove those, you still have a smear, like a slight smear on them. So the crystal ball is still obstructed in what it can know. But then if you remove this last layer of obstructions, which are now no longer called afflictive obstructions or obstructions to liberation, they are called cognitive obstructions or obstructions to Buddhahood, obstructions to awakening. Because they're still there on the mind, they're still not in the nature of the mind, and when you remove those, you become a Buddha. So you see the difference between those two? If you are liberated, you only remove the mud. If you're a Buddha, you remove the mud plus the stains, the subtler stains. So it's just 2 levels of stains, and depending on which level you remove, if you only remove one, you're called an arhat, you reach nirvana. If you remove the other level, you're not just called an arhat, you are an arhat, you're a foe destroyer, but more than that, you're now a Buddha. Why would you want to become one? Seriously. Who is interested in that? I mean, I'm satisfied with, nirvana is fine for me, I mean, I suffered so far, I had a lot of problems. Why would I want anything more? And a lot of people feel that way. So when the Buddha was around, he had many disciples who were like, but never mind, Nirvana is good enough for me, okay? So they entered what is called the fundamental vehicle. Hinayana vehicle is also called. Hinayana, hina can mean low, but not low as an inferior, but lower as the foundation for everything else. So when you have a building, you need a stable foundation. And that's at the lower level of the building, not at the higher level. It needs to be below.
If you don't know about the Hinayana and Mahayana.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But basically you have teachings the Buddha gave, as in like techniques, methods that take you to nirvana. So you don't know the word, but you know what I'm talking about. In essence, you know. So you want to go to nirvana, you follow what is called the foundational vehicle. The vehicle that takes you there, that's the foundation. So you go there. But you could also choose to become a Buddha. Then you enter what's called the Mahayana, or the universal vehicle, where not only you remove the what is in the way to nirvana, but you remove more than that. And so a person who wishes to become a Buddha is called a bodhisattva. It's really like a person who wishes to do this, who wishes to become a Buddha, is called a bodhisattva. All right. So that seems very straightforward, doesn't it? So you want to just remove afflictive obstructions to become self-liberated. You enter the path to liberation. There's not even a word for that person. There's no word. It's not like an arhat sattva or something, no. But there's a word for a person who wants to become enlightened. Bodhi means awakening or enlightenment. Sattva means a person or a hero. Someone who has the courage, the guts to try to become a Buddha. Now why? Why do you want to become a Buddha? Actually, and this is what's really important, you don't want to become a Buddha for yourself. You don't need to become a Buddha for yourself. You reach nirvana, that's good enough. Oh my God, no more trouble, no more suffering. But you do it for others. You do it for others. The idea is that a bodhisattva is someone, I said initially, someone totally motivated by so much love and compassion for others. Incredible love and compassion for others. So there are these techniques, and you're all familiar with these. These techniques of understanding we're not alone. We're so dependent on everyone else. If there were past lives, and there's a 50% chance there is past lives, so if there was past lives, we have any relationship with everyone. So from a Buddhist point of view, everyone has been very, very close to us. That is one reason. Everyone has been so kind to us. But an even more potent reason is the fact that we're all the same. We're all sentient beings. The differences between us, even genetically, are so minor. We have so much more in common. And so basically we all have this incredible mind, in the nature of which none of those afflictions really are. And so